About 10 years ago, I worked as the broker representing the buyers of Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory at the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. Lori Holden and her partner owned the franchise at the Mall of America. Today, it's one of the most successful stores in the Rocky Mountain franchise system. Since then, she opened up a new store at a different location in the Minneapolis area and even sold that. But find out, it wasn't exactly their first choice.
Actually, we started by saying we were only going to look at business to business because we did not want to have to work Saturday and Sunday. So we kind of went out looking for one thing and then ended up with something completely different that was perfect. For me, I think that it depends. If you really want to take the leap, you might go and start something brand new. And I was sort of, I did have kids and I had to take care of them and I had to know that I was getting an income. So what we did was buy a 10-year-old business that had a really good track record. So you got to fit the business to your lifestyle, what do you expect, what you want to risk, and go for it. I mean, I'm a person who can manage a business and can grow it and see what needs to be done. It was easier to start with somebody who had done something, and she had 10 years. December 3rd of 2004. It was on the same day the light rail opened. The light rail at the Mall of America is the transportation system that comes in from Minneapolis and opened its doors on the day that we acquired the company. And so that day, we were inundated with customers, and we were had no clue what we were doing. It was fun. Yeah. And the business, and that was not predicted in the business case, so we just benefited every bit. Well, we are positioned at the Mall of America, and there are several choices. We do have the track history, though, so that made it, and we also analyzed the market and who would be our competitors, and found out that, in fact, Godiva wasn't really a competitor at all. It was more maybe Victoria's Secret or, something that's because these are vacation dollars. And so our clientele is not necessarily the same clientele as a mall nearby that's just local people. It's one of the top 10 tourist destinations in the country.
I asked Lori about working with a broker, in this case myself, and also what kind of support the broker might bring to the table representing a buyer in this case, but the same is true for a seller. And then secondly, what kind of support did Rocky Mountain as a franchise bring to her, and what can you expect from your franchisor, and some questions you might want to ask.
Okay, so we worked with a broker, and that was essential because it gave us a person in the frame of the buying process who knew what was going to happen and knew what to expect and knew how to sort of ward off things that we would have, mistakes we just would have made, no question. So that was important. And he was awesome. And he's sitting right in front of me. Whether we admit it or not. Whether we all admit it or not. Yeah. And also, you provided a sort of calm, because this is something that we had not done. Giving up our paychecks is not something that I at least don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so giving up the paychecks, you're sort of panicky mode, and then having somebody who just says, yeah, that's reasonable, that's normal, expect that, that's okay, it's sort of an emotional role. So the franchisor helped us an enormous amount with the process of buying the place and getting trained for it. They were very supportive in the beginning, and also once we already owned the store. Everything that was new about it, when we had questions, they were extremely helpful in that way. Requirements that we had to meet with them in terms of paying the franchise transfer fee and renewing the franchise agreement and going for training, physical training, actually going on site to get trained in the chocolate making industry and all that.
Owning your own business has a number of rewards, but it also involves your entire family. In this case, Lori's husband is not her business partner, and it was important that they had a kitchen table conversation about what it was going to be like and how their family was going to change, especially with young kids. Let's take a listen.
No, he was real supportive.
Okay.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Because if he hadn't been real supportive, it would have been complete, couldn't have succeeded at all. Because the whole family's buying into it. It's not, and the kids are buying into it. They have to know that you're not going to be around for the first, I missed the first moment my second kid walked.
So, many years after the fact, what would she do differently? In the formative stages while she was buying the business, she concerned herself with a number of things that, while important, maybe seemed less important after the fact. And maybe there are some other things you might want to consider. Also, think about this. She's also been a seller. If you're a seller watching the video, keep in mind what her perspective was then and now, both as being a buyer and a seller in the process.
Well, for me, in the beginning, actually setting up a business and the structure of the business, although the structure is important, the idea of setting up a business was daunting. And so those things about insurance and getting the right this and that, I spent too much time on that. And it's not important. I mean, it is important, but you can fix it. You can get it right later. And I think maybe just making sure that you knew what you were getting into exactly, and spending time on, you know, maybe an exit strategy. And you hear that a million times before you get into a business, and then you go into it and you don't do it. And that's just ridiculous. You need it. You got to have it. Okay, there is something in terms of in terms of taking the business that was being managed by one person for 10 years, and you know, you lose a little bit here and there in certain things that you don't necessarily do as well, but you also gain. And there were incredible efficiencies in labor costs, for example, went from about 17-18% down to 10%. You know, and so all these things, efficiencies of how the store is run, those we were able to make gains. The nice thing has been seeing kids grow up in the retail industry. The kid is our youngest employee ever, who was getting his U.S. citizenship, very bright, and we kind of helped him out, and we became surrogate parents for him. And he's gone to university now. He's working for a really good company with a really good job now. The seller should keep in mind that the buyer is coming out of a different situation and is not in the business and doesn't understand it in the way they do. And so it may be everything from coming from the same industry but into a different role, or coming from a different, you know, economy entirely. And it feels very personal, and it feels like they shouldn't have to ask, or, you know, that's not something they need, but I think that understanding that also what they're putting into it is a huge investment. I mean, a huge investment. It can be your whole retirement going into this, and you need to know.
I want to thank Lori Holden for her time today, and especially the folks at Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. With you, I hope you've learned something from it, whether you're a broker, a franchisor, or a buyer, or a seller in this process. And if you've got a story to tell that you think is a good fit for FranchiseSmartMarket.com, drop me a line. Thanks. Have a great day.